Hi, I'm Sandra Younger, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you the proper way to crimp beading wire. And I will be using Soft Flex 49 strand in medium. And for the crimps, I'm going to be using the size that was suggested at the Soft Flex website, which is a 2x2 millimeter. And you can use either a base metal for your crimps or sterling silver. I prefer sterling silver because it doesn't corrode, and I've experienced like sometimes with the but I crimp them, they crack. So I never have that problem with sterling. So I just like stick with sterling. And as for the crimp covers, I'm also going to use sterling silver in a size that just fits over the crimp tube. And the tools that I like, let me talk about the tools. I love the Euro Tool crimping pliers. They're like a dual crimper. And I also, for the bead cover, you know, you have to kind of like close that seam. The Bead Buddy crimp cover closer is the best. And for cutters, I love the Tronics 5222. They're a flush cutter. And what's so amazing about these is that, you know, they've got a Rockwell hardness of at least 64, and they will cut through all thicknesses of the Soft Flex wire, which is, I love these cutters. They're the best. And lastly, I do use my Knotty-Do-It-All because it gives you a few extra hands that come in really handy when you're crimping beading wire. And with that said, let's get to the tutorial. Okay, I want to go over something very interesting. When you have your beading wire and you feed it through a crimp tube, you cannot see what's going on inside. So when you feed it through, it looks like, you know, oh, perfect, just crimp it. But what you don't see is that it actually crisscrosses inside. So when you, before you crimp, you just want to make sure that your crimp wire, or I mean your crimp is on, and then your wire is not crisscrossed over that. So I'm going to show you how I do this. And for a third hand, I have two clips like put together like this, and I have it on the board. And the nice thing is that sometimes when you're doing your crimping or putting on the bead cover, you kind of need to like wiggle things around a bit, and this is great because it moves back and forth. So let's get the clasp on. So you put the clasp on, and then you feed it through, you feed your wire back through, and make sure that it's not crisscrossing. And at this point, I leave about a 1-inch tail, and that tail is going to be very important in a minute. So I'm going to pull this one to tighten. Okay, so you don't want it too tight because you don't want your clasp to be like stiff. You want it to be like wiggly. Because when it's real stiff, it can that'll start to wear out your wire. So you just want it a little bit, you know, wiggly like this. So now we are going to clip this in a clip. You could either just clip your clasp directly, or you could just use some cord. And usually I have the cord like already in there, so it's easier. So, but you know, just something along these lines. So what we're going to do is see before I crimp it, see how it's, I'm holding these wires apart. Let me put something white underneath so you can see what I'm talking about. So you want to have them like apart. And you also want this facing straight up because when we crimp it, it has to be like exactly straight. So what I do is I use the second notch in my crimping pliers, the second one right there. So you come in and you make sure it's as straight as possible, and then you squeeze. Get a nice firm squeeze, and there you have it. See how that's how it should look. Let's come in. See that? So no crisscross wires. And then what I do is I like hold this, and then I just with this side bent, and this gets it away from here because you want to come in with your flush cutters and get right on top of the, like you could feel it when it hits. You just get it right in there and then cut. You get a nice clean cut. And then the next step is going to be to fold the crimp wire. And you just got to be really careful when you do this because you want it just right. So what I do is I take my Euro Tool crimpers here, and see that very first hole right there? what you do is you put your crimp in there and just, you have to look at it from, the top. You want to be able to see that bend, and then you hold it to the side and make sure it looks like perfectly straight. So right there. I'm looking at it. I'm going to go in just a tiny bit right there, and I'm going to squeeze. So that is what a properly crimped wire looks like. It's nice and clean. You've got one wire on one side, one on the other, and then it's squeezed together to give it extra strength. And the next tricky step is, of course, getting the infamous bead, the crimp cover bead. Everyone just loves that. But you know what? I've made it super easy. So what I do is see how I have tension? So then you take your crimp cover and you place it right on the bottom with one hand. See that? And then I'm going to come in with the other and hold it. And the thing with these crimp covers, that they bend very, very easily. So you don't have to use, like a lot of force. So you just gently close it. And you just kind of, if it looks like it's veering off to one side, just kind of squeeze it a little tiny bit. Like this way or that way, just to make sure that the seams meet up. So they don't close, so don't worry about that, because that is where the Bead Buddy guys, this plier comes from. So make sure the seam is straight up, and then you put your plier right in there, and then you squeeze it, and it miraculously closes it. And the reason it does that is because it's like the ball is getting like it's open, and then it's getting squished, closed. So that's how it works. So, and then you slide all your beads on, and then you do the other side. But it's pretty much the same. The only thing you got to be thinking about is you don't want it too tight. You don't want to, let's zoom out here. So I'm going to cut about 2 inches. Let's cut off about 2 inches here. And I'm going to put some extender chain on this end. So usually I go with about 1 inch of extender chain. So let's get 1 inch. Put that on just like this. And then you're going to do the same thing to where you come through the crimp bead, making sure not to let it crisscross. So what I do is I just hold it on this side, and then I pull. Sometimes using your pliers just to gently hold it so you could pull the other side is very helpful. But just keep your eye on it so it doesn't crisscross. So, and at this point I just, I hold it right there to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and then I just clip. You can put string if you want, but I just like to clip it just like that. Okay, now here's the tension part. So you want to make sure that when you turn it into a loop like that, it's not very, very stiff. So that's good about right there. And then you want to hold these wires apart like you did before. You come in with your crimping plier, and then you squeeze just like that. See that? Nice and pretty. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clip that extra wire off. And for some reason, when I do the second side, I always clip it, because it's just a lot easier to get, right in there nice and close and trim that wire. Perfect. So now we come in with, oh, not that guy. Yes, this one. And you want to hold it with if you try holding it with this side, the chain's going to roll around. But if you hold this side, you have a lot better control. So you just hold it about right there, just like that. And just bring this underneath, and then just remember to eyeball it before you crimp it. Just let's take a look. Nope. Right there, that looks good. Squeeze. All right. And if it looks like it's not like evenly squeezed, you can move your like pliers a little bit over and then squeeze that side. So now we're going to put the crimp cover on. It's basically the same thing. You come in with one hand, just like that. Let me do that again for you. Come in with this hand, switch it, and then you take your crimpers and remember to very slowly and gently squeeze, because you don't want it to like disfigure that ball. You can just kind of squeeze, 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 and of course that seam doesn't close, so that's where we get our bead buddy. Let's get the chain off of there. Okay. And remember, it has to be straight up for best results. All right, squeeze. There we go. It's closed. If it's not closed all the way, just you could twist it and then squeeze it again. Okay, that's perfect. So now there's perfect tension on the bracelet. It's not so stiff, because I used to make these and they never came out right. So that is how you do it. So the things to remember are just when you put the clasp on, make sure there's wiggle room. The chain side, unless it's really thick chain, it could be smaller, because because this is thinner than this part. And of course, lastly, oh, I left a crimp tube. Yeah, it kind of looks good. But what you want to do is always put a wire wrap bead at the end, and you should be good to go. All right. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.